Yeah, but okay. Should we get going?
Yeah, I'm good when you are, my friend.
Okay, brilliant. Let's do it. Okay, folks, it's 9 a.m., so we're going to get going. You're all so welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. I think the next hour will be extremely relevant to our audience. We've got a presentation first, and then we're going to have a Q&A session. For anyone who has questions, we encourage you to put them into the Q&A section because they may get lost in the chat if it's just in the chat section. So we encourage you to add them in there, and we'll hopefully get to those at some point. We'll kick off by saying a big thank you to the ERF for this opportunity, and a special thank you to Anna, who always makes these things happen, and a very special thank you to our sponsor, Contracting Plus, who make the breakfast briefings possible. And so we thank them for that. Contracting Plus are key partners for many of our members involved in contract recruitment. They are contracting experts and support their teams in getting new candidates set up into umbrella and limited companies so they can sign contracts on the same day. So if you're in contract recruitment, you should reach out to Jimmy or Jen. And again, thank you very much to Contracting Plus. So my name is Michael. I'll be your moderator today. So I want to introduce you to Louise. Louise is the Director of Mental Health and Wellbeing at EHS International and founder of the Denison Training Academy. Louise is expert in workplace well-being with extensive experience in improving mental health and awareness and promoting a healthier work environment. As a workplace well-being thought leader, consultant, and advanced mental health instructor, amazing. She is committed to addressing key workplace challenges such as productivity, health, safety, relationships, work-life balance, attendance, and overall job satisfaction. You'll see up in front of you, folks, our first poll. I'd encourage everyone to answer that. As part of the discussion today, we wanted to get your take as an audience, and we'll be doing another poll later. So answering that question there, do you talk or advise your clients on DE&I best practices in their recruitment processes? So if you could take a second to fill that out. Okay, thank you. Interesting. Okay, so occasionally folks are talking about DE&I best practices in their clients' recruitment processes. So thank you for that, folks. And Louise, that's a great starting off point. Looking at that poll, it seems like there's definitely some effort from recruiters to try to influence DE&I within their client's recruitment processes. I'd like to hand over to you for your presentation and maybe initially a reflection on that poll as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for the lovely introduction. And actually, you mentioned Contracting Plus are the sponsors. I've worked with them before. So a big hello to all the gang there. They're amazing. Thank you for having me. And thank you to all of you for attending this morning. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay with everyone. Just bear with me 1 second. Okay. Okay, so can you all see that okay? Michael, can you see that all right?
Yeah, we can see that, yeah.
Okay, so guys, this morning we are going to talk about tackling tough talks, DE&I and challenges. So I'll kick off. Tough conversations. What do we need to know? Well, we all know we don't like them. We don't like doing them. 99.9% of the population don't enjoy them. It's something we naturally will try and avoid if we can. But as managers, as working individuals working in recruitment, we have to do them. And dealing with them is a really important part of our jobs. And dealing with them and learning how to deal with them properly can be the difference of making an amazing manager versus one who's not maybe fulfilling the role properly. So the first thing to mention when we talk about, um, tough conversations, preparation is huge. Like anything, if you want to have a chance of doing well at something, preparation is massive. So, with the right preparation, 95% of these conversations are okay. So, think of a time when you've had to deal with something and you launch straight into it, and you could be quite emotive, you could be quite frustrated, and you start in maybe an accusatory tone, even personal conversations as well, they don't end well. So the first thing to get right is consider the preparation. So we're going to talk about some different steps when we're tackling kind of tough conversations. So the first one, don't put off the conversation. It's very easy. We're amazing procrastinators, and it's very easy to go, you know what, I'll leave it off, or I won't say it the way I should say it. But don't put off the conversation. Um, if you don't do anything, your actions say that poor behavior is acceptable. I know with recruitment, you have two sides. You've got your candidates and you've got your clients. And when it comes to both sides, you're spinning a lot of plates. So sometimes you have to, deal with kind of difficult conversations. And even though it's maybe not the news you want to deliver to a candidate, or a client per se, if they're being quite maybe closed-minded or narrow-minded, um, you do need to address it. And if you work as part of a team as well, you definitely need to address it. And the reason being is if people think poor behavior is acceptable, it directly impacts the culture in an organization. And eventually good people leave. So we talk about psychological safety a lot on a lot of our courses, and we talk a lot about improving culture. And at the end of the day, if you have behaviors that are acceptable, poor behavior, good people will eventually leave. Give yourself enough time to prepare for the conversation is the first step. So the second thing I would say when it comes to tough conversations is put yourself in a positive mindset. Go in expecting that you're going to get a good outcome, and the chances are you'll get it. Believe it or not, we all emit certain, like when we're stressed, for example, we emit stress hormones. When we have a positive mindset, we emit some of the positive hormones, our serotonin and dopamine. So go in with a positive mindset. Your confidence and calmness will impact other people. So again, if you come in really, really nervous and looking at your shoes or looking out the window, or you come in really aggressive or really frustrated, that conversation is doomed before it starts. So just consider that. Make sure you're in the right mindset to have the conversation. So preparation increases confidence. Again, even anything I've done personally in my life, the more I prepare for it, the more I'm confident and feel able to do it. The more you do something as well, the next time is less intimidating. So do your preparation and that you feel a little bit more in control. So before you have the conversation, ask yourself, what outcome do you want from this conversation? Do you want a client maybe to be more open-minded? Do you want a candidate to maybe listen more in the interview process? Do you want them to maybe engage more with certain areas before, do more preparation for interviews? Ask yourself, what outcome are you looking for this conversation? To make your outcome specific. As I said, I know with recruitment and a lot of the research that I've done, a problem can be clients have a very specific mindset in the type of people they want to deal with. And in fact, that narrows the options for them. So again, maybe that could be an outcome that you face regularly. So the next thing is, I know it sounds like a simple thing to say, but always, 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 no exceptions, hold the meeting in private. So by holding the meeting in private, there's no spectators, it's not fair on the candidate or the other person, it's not fair on you. You don't need to have it anywhere but in private. Okay, so that's really, really important. So prepare evidence of examples. So, we can all kind of say, oh, in my opinion, and that's argument. That can become an argumentative thing because you don't have the facts. You always prepare yourself with the facts. So those are examples. So examples move from opinions to facts. So conversations about facts is less emotional and it's easier actually to deal with because you're dealing with something that's happened. A fact is a fact, you can't change it. And then you can lead with the fact that's happened, and then you ask a question. So, for example, if somebody is always late, on, such and such a date and such and such a date, and three other dates you were late, you were in past 15 minutes, more than 15 minutes late. Can you explain to me what's going on in that situation? Is there a problem? Is it a public transport issue, a parking issue? Try and get a better understanding. Be really specific with examples. So be really specific with the examples you do use. So have it like literally written down in front of you and have your prep work there, have the examples specific to that individual and have them that you can refer back to them in the conversation. Use numbers in your examples. And what I mean by that is on 5 occasions, you've looked for a candidate of with these qualifications. And on 5 occasions, we haven't been successful. And the reason we haven't been successful is maybe you need to increase the budget. Maybe you need to look further afield. Maybe we need to open the criteria a little bit more. So sometimes as well, you can make it about an action or lack of an action. So in meetings, every time we have a meeting, you get frustrated about when we bring up X. So, or every time we have group meetings, you don't turn up or you leave early, or, so use numbers in your examples and make it about an action or a lack of action. So plan, but don't script. So again, have your bullet points. Have your bullet points of what you want to cover that you can refer back to, but don't obviously read off a mandate because that wouldn't be particularly professional. So remember that the person asking the questions controls the conversation. So maybe have some questions lined up. So instead of why, more often I would use what. So when you use why do you do something, it can evoke an emotional response. But when you use the word what, like what makes you so frustrated when it comes to this situation, as opposed to why do you get so frustrated? So where appropriate, if you can, aim to help the other person. Again, you're trying as recruiters to build relationships. So when you help other people and, maybe you do things above and beyond, you're cementing relationships for future, and I suppose future working together. And again, that helps your business as well as theirs because there's trust as well, you're improving. So outline the consequences of no changes. So what I mean by that is if we keep doing what we've always done, nothing changes. There's a famous quote, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So what I mean by that is if you don't do something different here, we're not going to get a different result. We're not going to get a higher quality of candidate. You're not going to get the job if you continue to do this behavior or whatever in an interview. So again, outline what happens if they don't change. So I'm sure you are all very familiar with active listening, but we have 2 ears for a reason and 1 mouth. So again, we're supposed to, they say, listen twice as much as we talk. So active listening is a powerful tool in difficult conversations, and not listening to respond, listen to hear. So again, we're very guilty sometimes of listening to just respond straight in. Listen to actually hear what they're saying. And remember, if you're not prepared to listen to them, why should they listen to you? So give somebody the respect and time to actually listen to where they're coming from. And they could have a very valid reason. I remember asking my father, who was an employer, and in the area here, and I remember saying to him, do you ever like reward, like acknowledge good work in your organization? And I remember him saying, with the old school mindset that he has, and it is a generational thing, Louise, you want me to pay them and reward them with, saying how great they are. And I remember thinking, oh, wow, we've a lot to learn, but also that's a generational thing as well. So keep your emotions under control. So the better you control your emotions and convey empathy and understanding, the easier the difficult conversation is for both parties. You know yourself, guys, if you go in and you get frustrated at someone, they're going to get frustrated back. So the person cannot feel like they're being attacked in any way because you won't actually get anywhere. And if somebody is very emotional in their response, you're not going to get the logical response that you're looking for. So tackling tough conversations, to summarize, what do we need to know? So use a calm, steady, relaxed tone and pace of voice. Remember the importance of a positive mindset. So like even the faking till you make it, until you get through it and you have a bit more confidence. Use lots of examples rather than stating opinion. Do not state opinion. Quote your facts. Get your facts correct, because that's actually how you change things as well. Stay professional and in control of your emotions. Again, we all know or maybe have an idea what our triggers are. If you are triggered by something, work it out before you even go into the meeting. Ask questions and actively listen. Be clear when making your statements, get to the point quickly, and experiment and build your confidence. So the more you do it, the more you get used to it, and the easier it becomes. Might be something you ever enjoy, but the easier it becomes. So DE&I and challenges. So diversity, equality, and inclusion and challenges. So there's huge number of stresses and demands on recruiters in current day. Any recruiter I've spoken to has told me about the amount of spinning plates you have going on, and the amount of people you have to please sometimes can be quite stressful. Excuse me. So one of the things I've heard quite a bit lately is the market is quite tight and there's not enough quality candidates. So what is the solution? Convincing your clients to widen their net. So how do we do that? You lay out the benefits for clients on being more DE&I focused. So you lay out the benefits for maybe them looking further afield, relaxing their parameters. I mean, some of the great leaders have said they would rather work with a less educated person, but someone who's willing to learn, than someone with all the qualifications in the world and thinks they know everything. Because if somebody feels like they know everything, they don't know what they need to know. So they don't realize that they've actually a lot of unlearning to do. Because if people learn bad habits along the way and are not even aware of them, if they're not aware of them, they're not able to unlearn them and learn habits that are maybe more healthy. For example, they could have more candidates to choose from if they did adapt their policy on recruitment. So clients, for example, could offer flexible hours, as 9 to 5 doesn't work for everyone. So even like mums, with children of various ages, maybe can't always do 9 to 5, but by offering more flexible hours, could be an option to widening the net and getting quality candidates, but you just have to be a little bit more flexible. And again, job sharing, I know quite a few people that do job sharing very successfully, highly qualified people, but don't want to work due to family reasons, the full working week. So they job share, and it seems to work very well. And it's in lots of different industries as well. So how to bridge the gender gap? So there's lots of answers to this question, and I'm sure many of you will have an opinion on it. But one thing from a recruiter perspective is to review how job specifications are being written. For example, you could use softer and inclusive language, images targeting male or female candidates. So again, I was recently did a wellness day in a company where it was 98% male. And I kind of asked the question, why was it so male orientated? And they did say that, well, a lot of the work is physical. But then I started to observe around the factory floor. And a lot of the physical work was actually carried out by machines, forklifts, and all other machines that I haven't got a clue what they're called. But my point is, they were pressing buttons to move the stuff. It wasn't actually physical when I looked at it. So why couldn't females apply for a job like that? I'm not saying they want to, but if they did, because they were having problems recruiting. So again, looking at it from maybe a slightly different perspective. So how we bridge the gender gap, there's obviously equal pay is still an ongoing issue in some industries, promotion of work-family balance, to name a few. I know after COVID, there was a lot of people wanted more balance in their lives, especially. So do recruitment personnel feel confident tackling difficult conversations is a question to ask your organization. Or do they feel they need further education to feel comfortable having these conversations? Regardless of the question, it should be asked in every organization. So training in emotional intelligence be very beneficial for all individuals working in recruitment. The reason being, some people have a much higher EQ than others naturally. Some people can read the room in an instant, and some people have absolutely no comprehension as to what's going on. But by at least educating in this area would be quite beneficial for recruitment personnel and dealing with the everyday challenges that they have to deal with. So what can companies do if their teams are stressed and under pressure and maybe not meeting targets? So stress management training has proven to be really useful for employees who maybe not reaching sales targets and struggling with the pressure of the role. Again, if you're stressed, you're not functioning at full capacity, you're not functioning, and you don't have access actually to the most intelligent, logical part of your brain. So again, there's different types of training that can be offered for individuals who are really struggling with not meeting targets. So when it comes to different tips for recruiters, ideally it should be skills first recruitment. So I've heard people talk about, leaving names off CVs or where people went to school, which is a brilliant idea because again, their skills is what you should be recruiting for, not where the individual comes from. All companies should mention that they are an equal opportunities employer, which I'm sure most of you know. I came across this grant, the Workplace Adaptation Grant, which is basically a grant which I could be preaching to everyone that knows this. It basically supports companies to become partially or fully funded by the government for making it wheelchair friendly. So a lot of organizations, like I know there's candidates out there in wheelchairs that can't get jobs because the environment is not conducive to for having a wheelchair access. And again, there's grants out there that might up to fully funding, partial to fully funding available. The Workplace Adaptation Grant is what that one's called. Asking your clients what are their staff retention plans. Again, attrition across many industries is up to 15%. And one of the big questions is, what are you doing to retain staff? The cost of bringing somebody new in, the retraining, the loss of brain power when they do leave, good people. Asking clients what their staff retention plans are something worth considering. So what is unconscious bias when it comes to recruitment? So it's basically, it happens when someone forms an opinion, good or bad, of a candidate based on factors relevant to their skill set and experience that influence the hiring decision, whether it's age, gender, education, or race. So it's that it influences the decision unfairly. So DEI interviewers should standardize line of questioning. So there should be a standardized line of questioning for all interviews. So to keep it that you are not discriminating against anyone unfairly. So how do we change or influence those with a closed mindset? Education, education, and education. I know that sounds dramatic, but it is so true. There's only one way to change somebody with a closed mindset, and that is educating them in the area and opening them up to the idea of having a more open mindset. So webinars, for example, for clients can be one of the most cost-effective methods of achieving this. So when trying to influence someone, reward and acknowledge. When we reward, people respond positively. When someone is getting worked up, use inclusive language. For example, I notice we're both struggling with this. Maybe we could, link back in half an hour. When you separate the behavior from the person, you have to ask yourself, is this worth it? Is this worth my heart attack? Because if you're the person that's always stressed, you have to remember that your health is the most important in any situation. And inevitably, you'd like to think the answer is no, it's not worth your own heart attack. So, an example of instead of asking, why are you so negative, as this would evoke an emotive response, what is making you so negative? So, replace your judgment with curiosity. So, again, when you're struggling with difficult conversations, remember, take a minute to respond and not react. So, guys, that is actually the end of my presentation. So I'm going to hand it back to you, Michael, if that's okay. I'll stop sharing my screen just now and hand it back. I just want to say a big thank you to everyone for listening to that. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Louise. Really appreciate it. And loads and loads and loads of things there to reflect on, and a playbook on how we can have difficult conversations. Really appreciate that. So thank you for the presentation. So now we'll move into our Q&A section of today, of this morning, folks. Again, if people have questions, add them to the Q&A section. Just to engage our audience again, we have another poll for you here. And based on what you just heard, we'd love to get a sense from you on how willing you are to have difficult conversations. So please fill that out. In the meantime, I want to introduce you to the rest of our panel this morning. So we have Emma Anglin here. Emma is Commercial Director with Brightwater Group and heads up the HR division. She joined the Brightwater Group in 2007, where she focused on the temporary and contract business support market. She has a proven track record of leading successful teams, focusing on business support and HR and recruitment on both permanent, contract, and temporary basis across a broad range of industry sectors. So undoubtedly has had many difficult conversations over the years. And we have Moya Griffith. Moya is Senior Recruitment Partner with Clark Recruitment, where she has spent the last 5 years supporting her clients from across many industries with their temp needs. This covers many functions like operations and accounts and sales and marketing. So again, a wide range of experience there to share with us. So you're both welcome. And Louise, you'll stay with us as well. So we have the results of the poll coming through. So how willing are you to have difficult conversations? Very willing or somewhat willing, which is encouraging to see, and that people are willing to go for it. So thank you for that, folks. Okay, so I guess to kick things off, Emma, coming to you.
Yeah, hi, Michael.
Hey, when having difficult conversations, right, how do you build trust and rapport when you're having those conversations with clients or candidates?
Yeah, and I think Louise brought up a number of very valid points there. Quite an interesting one that I found is that what instead of why question. And one thing is obviously when you can, because all of these conversations happen off the cuff, but fail to prepare to fail is definitely one. So look, take a deep breath. What I probably find the most important when building a rapport or trust with candidates or clients during those difficult conversations to remember that we're all human. So try and build that human connection, makes it less transactional, and try and be authentic and genuine. That will make it less transactional. So to build that human connection, try to get to know your client or your candidate as a person, and to do that you'll have to be open, sincere, and be transparent. Everybody's unique, so you'll have to tailor your conversation, your approach, depending on who your candidate or your client is. But maybe try and find some non-recruitment common ground, whether it be your kids or your dog or your budgie or your canary, whatever the case may be. That definitely helps. That I've found sort of build that rapport, which will, I hope, open up conversations and make those difficult conversations a little bit more easy. They'll remember that you're a human, not just a recruiter trying to close off a process. As Louise said, they're listening, and active listening, which I think could be very difficult sometimes for recruiters. I know I find it difficult. you have to fight the urge sometimes to control the conversation or maybe interrupt the conversation in my case. But active listening to what the candidates or clients are saying is so important, but probably even more important maybe is to listen to what they're not saying. As Louise pointed out earlier, ask open-ended questions, maybe more of the what instead of the why. But try and ask open-ended questions around their pain points. What are their, what do they want to get out of this, or what are their non-negotiables? And that allows you then to gain a better understanding of where you steer the conversation, or what their ideal outcomes are, where they can't negotiate and where maybe they can negotiate a little bit. But I think as recruiters, we're naturally, some people say nosy, I prefer to call it curious. So know what you're getting out of the conversation. Try and open up that conversation. Sometimes when I find when I'm out and I get the look from my husband, means I know I've gone into recruiter mode. But use that recruiter mode to get what you can out of the conversation. Use that curiosity, adapt your style, maybe your tone, your vocabulary, depending on who you're talking to. And I think another important thing is maybe don't make promises you can't deliver on, especially in a difficult conversation. Sometimes as recruiters, you want to please all the time, or you want to take the a route out where you'll end the conversation, but don't make a promise you can't deliver on, or set unrealistic expectation, because that will encourage another very difficult conversation. And then the other thing is, I think sometimes you have to know when it's okay to walk away. A friend of mine has a very good saying you can't explain the ocean to a frog in the well. So sometimes you have to either go, okay, I need to walk away here, or sometimes you just have to take a break and maybe come up with an alternative plan, and come to some sort of mutual conclusion. But I think that's about all I have to add on that for the moment. Michael, hope that was helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. Appreciate it. And more coming to you. Give us some examples of situations that you've faced, common kind of situations where you've had to have difficult conversations in your role, maybe with your clients or candidates.
Yeah, thanks, Michael, and thanks again, Louise. It's nice to join in. And I suppose just, before I tackle that question, Michael, there's certainly common ground in what Louise discussed, and I was kind of smiling to myself when Emma was sharing there, because I find that when I meet people for the first time, I can be very kind of curious, and I feel like their hands are sweating by the end of the conversation because I'm kind of asking them so many questions. But yeah, and just I absolutely understand that we're all at different levels of our career as recruiters, and it's easier for us to sit up here and say that, we can have difficult conversations with clients. But for somebody starting out on their recruitment journey, it can be quite difficult. And, what's really helped me over the last number of years is being in a room with different recruiters of varied experience and eavesdropping on conversations, and building my confidence that way, because there's nothing like the practical experience of listening to somebody else dealing with it that will help you grow in that situation. So yeah, look, I mean, over the years I've had there's a lot of ageism still out there, with clients in particular. And I suppose, recently I've had situations where, you know, I've had two clients where they've been adamant that they wanted a younger candidate. And, people, I think, while with the best will in the world say, oh, I'm not discriminatory, and they don't intend to be, but yet it's not until they're kind of tackled on that they kind of realize, well, actually I am. So, I've had only last week I had a client ring me up and go, oh, has that candidate done their leaving cert? And, for me, I'm like, I would always look at skills over, academics or, qualifications and certifications, because I always feel that skills and experience speak volumes. We can all have the textbook, but, when it comes to actual practicality, and being world wise and, streetwise, there's nothing like experience. So I would tackle clients on why do you want to have the younger person, or why wouldn't you consider somebody with more experience? And actually, in one situation where they were adamant they wanted the younger person that they could mold into a role. It turned out, they weren't actually matching in their head the job description that they had with the person that they wanted. So they had this elaborate job description where it really was better suited to somebody who's been like 5, 6+ years in that particular role. And yet they wanted somebody to come in and that they could mold into the role. So from teasing that out and having a really in-depth conversation with my client, I successfully ended up recruiting a very experienced candidate on a temporary contract who last week went permanent with the client, was taken on directly by them because, he wanted somebody, it was a business that was, really thriving, but he was on his own with, people dipping in and out and helping out here and there. So once he had somebody who could come in, pull everything together, it just made his life so much easier. So there's those kind of situations where people don't realize it's the lack of education, I suppose, really. I've also had, people. I had one client in particular who was hiring for a marketing role, and I had some really good non-Irish people to send across, and they were like, "Oh yeah, but they won't get the Irishisms, like leaning over the gate with the customer or that kind of thing." And I'm, you know, like there was no issue with their English. They were really creative people. They had their own sort of portfolios that they could share and show their talent. And yet that client was just so adamant that they wanted somebody who would understand the Irish way of thinking. And yet, it's become so apparent in the last couple of years that there's been such an influx of non-Irish nationals coming into the country that, it's becoming such a much more diverse community in any case, and that a lot of their customers might actually not just, and they won't just be Irish, they'll be across the board and across the spectrum. So yeah, so I suppose like the unconscious bias that both ladies have mentioned is a real thing. And I suppose the better you build up a relationship with clients and build that trust that Emma spoke about, the easier it will be to have a conversation and, definitely getting on site to meet your clients and understand the culture that they have and the environment that our candidates will be working in is much easier. And from the other perspective, I suppose I know I'm going on a bit now, but the candidate, like we've had situations where candidates haven't worked out and, for one reason or another, but I would always take the approach with the candidate that kind of keep it very neutral. And I suppose coach them if it's something like, with a lack of maybe skill in terms of a system or something, fair, say that to them. But where it's something like where, one situation, it was in a solicitor's firm and the candidate had a very outgoing personality, and it just didn't fit in with the environment, or so they said. But like, so my approach to that was very much and keeping it neutral in terms of like there was nothing wrong with the candidate. They just had a very kind of outspoken social kind of demeanor. But so it was just a very neutral kind of conversation in terms of, look, they've decided to go a different direction. So I suppose it's just kind of knowing your audience, knowing how to engage with somebody, and that's just by building experience and building trust, both candidate and client.
Yeah. Points well made, and some really relevant examples that I think we're all familiar with. And I think the recruitment industry has often been quite subservient to our clients, and we take jobs from them and the instruction on what they're looking for, and often don't push back when we have the opportunity to actually maybe open their mind or open them up to a different possibility, which is really what truly being a recruitment consultant is pushing back and being able to bring our experience from the market to say, well, actually, we think, I think this person could do this role. But that's difficult. It's difficult to have that confrontation. And I think as humans, well, I know for myself, I'm conflict averse. I don't, I don't run towards conflict. And I've built up experience in knowing that it's never as hard or it's never as bad as it feels or thinks in your head before you go into the conversation. Afterwards, it's never as bad. So you have to kind of jump in and go for it. So no, thanks for sharing those. And I think the coming to you, Louise, I mean, you mentioned in your presentation there about stress management, and I know you do whole courses on this, but maybe briefly speaking to that, because as recruiters, we have, like you said, a lot of spinning plates, a lot of things, and going into these conversations can be stressful. And you mentioned, point number 2, that you need to go in with a positive mindset. But if you're worried and stressed, that might be difficult. So going into those conversations, do you have any tips on how you might get in there with a positive mindset and reduce stress?
Yeah, I mean, I think our stress management is like a whole picture. Sometimes people would say, well, like, can you give me one thing I can do to just be de-stressed? And it's like, like the miracle pill, or it doesn't roll like that. But when it comes to our stress, I suppose a really good thing to do is write a list down of your triggers, identifying what your triggers are that stress you out. And a lot of people are like, well, I don't have a clue what my triggers are. And then what I would say to them is, well, start to become aware of what is triggering you. Like, is it in traffic, or is it when people are rude to you, or is it when people don't do what they say they're going to do? Start to observe your body and mind on how you respond in those situations, or how you feel in those situations. Often we kind of suppress it and keep it down, and are very professional, but in reality, underneath it all, we're a bit like going, oh my goodness, what is going on here, or whatever, and get frustrated. So also, our stress levels are, if you imagine a holy bucket, and imagine a holy bucket with taps at the bottom, and the more we put stuff in to the bucket, the more we suppress. And we need to have things that we do in our lives to be able to turn on those taps. And those things are, what do you do to relax? What do you do for downtime? And a lot of people will be like, oh, I don't know. And I was like, well, like, I mean, it can be as simple as going for a walk. It can be spending time with friends. It can be looking at, how often do you socialize? Like, how often do you get out and just meet someone for the sake of just meeting them? Especially if you are juggling a lot of things in your life as well. Other things like to consider if you are feeling very stressed is kind of the basic stuff, which is you look at your water intake, you look at your sleep hygiene. Are you guilty of having your phone, to your face before sleep? 99% of people are. We're not, guilty. But even things like, having the brightness down completely, ideally not having it there, practice, removing it maybe from the space that you sleep in, looking at your nutrition. I constantly hear my teenagers go, I feel crap, or I feel this. And I'm like, well, no offense, but if you put crap into your body, expect to feel like crap, or expect your skin to be crap, So look at what you're eating. And it's not a case of becoming the healthiest person on the planet. Change one thing. Swap one cup of coffee for one glass of water. A big thing as well is to look at the relationships in your life. We have so there's 5 kind of, say, the 5 people, 5 relationships in our life there's 5 kind of important relationships, and one of those relationships is the relationship we have with ourselves. And that's the most important relationship. So that inner voice that we all have, that can be the biggest bully on the planet and can be really mean and bitchy sometimes to us all. Start questioning that voice. Start questioning, does this serve me? Does this abuse that I give myself all the time serve me? So no, it doesn't. Would I speak to my best friend like that, or my child like that? Of course I wouldn't. So why are you treating yourself like that? So, we are all doing the best we can in the circumstances we're in, with the hand life has, dealt us. And we can't change the hand we've been dealt, but the one thing we can learn to change is our response to the hand we've been dealt. So looking at how we respond to it is really important, and looking at how we respond to ourselves. Like I'm a medic as well in a past life, and one of the things we talk about is your safety first. But in reality, with mental health, it's your mental health first as well. And the reason that is because you can't be all those things to all those other people in your life if you are not that to yourself, and like minding yourself, like for instance, taking the breaks when you need them, you know, enjoying the relationships of the people that are positive relationships and influences in your life. Asking yourself, when did you laugh so hard, like you nearly hurt, your stomach was sore? Who in your life makes you laugh like that? A lot of people don't have anyone, so it's like looking at comedians or whoever makes you laugh on TV and downloading something that you have, that makes you laugh and entertained or whatever. Because in reality, we are the components of a whole person, looks at all these different things. And remember as well, guys, the people that you are around a lot of the time, whether you work with them, live with them, are married to them, I don't know, but say those people are stressed a lot of the time. Remember, they can now scientifically prove that when we're super stressed, we give off stress hormones through our pores, our cortisol, okay? And that cortisol is absorbed directly through the pores of the people around you. So, when somebody creates an atmosphere, they're physically doing it as well as kind of mentally and emotionally. So when you're around someone that's stressed, so be very careful who you spend your time with. And if it's people that you live with, which teenagers, let's call a spade a spade. You're not getting away from them anytime soon. So in reality, you put boundaries in. You put boundaries in with the people that maybe you live with, or family, or parents, or siblings, or friends, or whatever. You put a boundary in. Look, I'm not willing to talk about that right now. Or look, we don't get anywhere when we talk about this, and it's actually not good for my mental health. Or step back from the people, the negative, toxic relationships in your life, because we all have them. And although it seems like a horrible thing to do to hurt someone, I did it, and I'm still regretting the reality of hurting the person because I stepped back from a very negative, toxic relationship. And it breaks my heart every day that I hurt them, but I had to step back from it for my mental health. As you can see, Michael, I could talk about this subject all day, so I'm just going to pause there. Okay.
Thank you. No, yeah, absolutely. Points well made, and thank you for that, Louise. And Emma, when we think about recruitment and our jobs, over the last few years, recruitment's always up and down, but it's been exceptionally up and down over the last while. And
a roller coaster, I'd say. You say, Michael.
Absolutely, yeah. So, if we turn our attention to kind of thinking about our own desks as recruiters, and you think about kind of trying to refocus and reevaluate our recruitment strategies and how we operate our desks. What steps do you take with your teams to do those things and kind of try to get better results?
Yeah, I think one thing we've done and we do on an ongoing basis, like we work now in a data-driven, technology-driven, AI-driven life. Our managing director in particular is very data-driven, and we have all this technology. We all have CRM systems that can give us any amount of data, but it's actually taken a step back to look at that and see. We did an exercise last year where we looked at all this data, what were our fill rates, what are our CV sends to interviews or interviews to placements. And what you don't realize, because as recruiters, you get excited when jobs come in, lots of jobs, lots of, potential fees, et cetera, and you put all this time in. And then sometimes there's clients that are just not responsive. And when you actually take a step back to look at that data, you realize potentially how much time you've put into clients where you've had no fill rates, no jobs filled. So I would say take a look at your jobs over the last year. What clients have been good to work with? Where have you had exclusive jobs? Where have where have you actually had the buy-in? Where have you had that good CV send to interview ratio because your client's been open, you've opened up those conversations, you know exactly what they want, and you've got the process through quickly or relatively quickly from start to finish with good ratios. And then have a look at those clients where you've had 20 jobs and no jobs filled, and the amount of time that has gone into those, and see what need to be your priority clients moving forward. And then, things like this, attend all the ERF seminars, any LinkedIn seminars, webinars, etc. Talk to peers in your industry, see, are they feeling as much pain as you are? Has anybody come up with other innovative even solutions? And just take it on in and take those pieces and actually try and put them into action. And you'd be amazed at because I couldn't believe when we did that exercise last year, some of what we thought were maybe key clients actually weren't. So take that step back and look at that data, use what you have, and refocus.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a real kind of comfort in talking to peers in the industry to understand
Absolutely.
that we all have the same problems, and that actually kind of helps in a way.
Yeah.
And on that point, Emma, right? So you're looking at your customers, and let's say there's one that you're putting a lot of time and energy in, but not really getting the results. Do you have that difficult conversation with them? And what's the aim of that with the end in mind? What are you trying to get out of that?
Well, I suppose you sit down with them and you can bring the data with you. You can show, look, we've had these many roles with you. We've sent this amount of CVs. It's taken you a week, 2 weeks, 5 weeks to come back. Then you're educating about the whole candidate experience. So, if they're taking too long to come back to you in relation to CV feedback or interview feedback, what effect is that having on their brand? So you can turn it into a whole education piece for the client. So you're therefore getting more and more, you should be getting more and more buy-in from them. It's a whole education process. But sometimes then, as I said earlier on, they don't want to know. And so sometimes you have to know where to draw a line and walk away, because sometimes, whether it's because they have a head office in the US that says no, black is black and that's all there is to it, and we don't want any green candidates anymore, we only want blue candidates, or whatever the case may be, you have to sometimes walk away. But sometimes when you have those difficult conversations, and as Louise said earlier on, you're armed with all of this data, so you're standing behind facts, but you're opening up a nice conversation with them, then sometimes that difficult conversation can lead to a really good and effective relationship where you build and change processes and you all have the outcome that you want. You place the candidate, they have the candidate that they're looking for. The candidate's happy because they have a nice candidate experience, and it's a win-win.
Nice. Yeah. And using data to kind of illuminate the point is really powerful, I think.
100%.
And where, on that point, so, what do you see as the kind of common signs that the recruitment strategy approaches aren't working, or that you need to reevaluate and adjust things?
Like a lot of the time, and Emma kind of touched on it there, there are too many chiefs. So there's too many hiring managers involved in the process. So like, you get a call from a client requesting a position to be filled, and CVs are sent, and then they're passing it over to another person, that person's passing to another person, and there's too many people involved, and that's what's lengthening out the process as well. So, understanding like exactly who you need to be talking to, who the ultimate hiring manager, who's the person with the decision at the end of the day, and negotiating rates and stuff like that. That's the person you need to make sure that you're talking to, because it's really time wasting outside of that. And as well as that, I suppose I kind of looked at it from the other perspective as well. When you see like why clients haven't been successful in, recruiting the right candidate, because vacancies are open for too long. Like I had an example there where a client came to us, but they had gone to the market themselves originally, and I was putting a candidate forward, and the candidate said to me, actually, if this is X client, I don't want to work with them because I've already gone through the process with them and it's taken way too long and they didn't come back to me. And there's people, left in the lurch with no feedback. So that needs to be tightened up on as well, where you're following through with candidates and getting the feedback from clients as well, and keeping everything kind of streamlined. standardizing the screening process, ensuring that, like, you're getting the best fit candidate, knowing exactly what your client is looking for. Again, like speeding up that whole process. Yeah, so there's different elements involved in, why recruitment strategies work and don't work. But like, I suppose the key thing is speaking to the right person first and foremost, and then moving it from there, and knowing exactly what they want, and know their timeframes and know their pain points. Like, if it's something that they need done in a hurry, like, offer them the temporary solution while you recruit for the permanent. And I suppose, in some ways, going the retained road as well, like in terms of having exclusivity, so you avoid all the messing in terms of overlap with candidate applications, too many agencies working on the same job, them going to the market. It just gets messy. So the retained model is a good approach as well.
Mm. Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. The retained model certainly ensures that the client is serious about, making the hire. We've 5 minutes left, folks. So if there's any questions, remember to put them into the Q&A section. There is a question that's there, so we'll just get to it now. Thanks for this, Jalpa. So the question is, in the case of gender diversity hiring, there are job roles on rotational shifts that are eligible, that there are eligible female applicants who are ready to take the job, but the hiring manager, doesn't seem to want to hire any women. What could we do there? Emma, what are your thoughts?
Well, I suppose we were having this conversation before we went live about, we've had a client, one of my colleagues has a client recently who, I recruit for HR, so DE&I is really a big focus for a lot, but some really are standing behind it and working with it, and some aren't. So you have to find out if your client is really serious about, working with diverse candidates, working with male or female candidates, whatever the case may be. So a couple of things that we've done recently, or one of my colleagues in particular, take the names off CVs, and then they don't know whether they're green, blue, or orange. Take their, if they're secondary schools, especially in Ireland, some are male or female secondary schools, take those off and maybe take off their hobbies. So then they are just literally basing their decision on a skill set or a particular experience. Then look at, when your clients are interviewing, looking at taking out that bias, as Louise discussed earlier on, and but having that open conversation with your clients, looking at whether they'll include that, to look at more skill-based hiring and experience-based hiring rather than the personality. See if they're interested, or have they done unconscious bias training, or would that be something that they're interested in? Looking at maybe other mediums where you can advertise, where you can access candidates with disabilities, or other abilities or non-abilities, whatever the case may be. So try and opening up that conversation and giving them solutions that they could look at, and show them, okay, if you do this, you could have, instead of me sending you 2 candidate CVs, you could have 22. So try and see where their pain points are and try and address those and work backwards maybe from there.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there was a famous example of a candidate, and she was born and raised, educated, and had worked in Ireland, and couldn't get any interviews because her name read as a Nigerian name, and then she changed it to like Mary O'Keefe or something, and all of a sudden got all these interviews. And it's just so demonstrative of the bias that's out there based on just the name that's on the top of the CV, for sure.
Agreed.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think we're coming to the end of the hour now, so want to wrap it up. And so to say to Louise, thank you so much for the presentation, for all the hints and tips and guidance on how to handle difficult conversations. As recruiters, we're constantly having those conversations, and as Moira illuminated with some of the examples of the type of situations that we're going into, often are quite emotive and difficult. So really, really appreciate you talking us through that and helping us. So thank you. And Emma and Moira, brilliant commentary on so many different difficult parts of our role. So thank you so much for that. really appreciate you taking the time. So folks, really appreciate you giving us your time and energy today and sticking with it and listening to our thoughts. We hope that you found this useful. And finally, just want to close by, again, thanking the team at Contracting Plus for sponsoring this year's breakfast briefings. If you're working with contractors, make sure you're chatting to Contracting Plus and have them on your partner list for umbrella and limited companies. We'll leave it there. Hope you have a great day. Get out there, have difficult conversations, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks all.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for having me.